Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to OPART. Today we will discuss a very important topic. As we are all aware that there are two wars which are being fought at different two locations in the world. One is Russia-Ukraine war and second is Israel, initially Hamas and now Hezbollah war which is going on. These two wars, it is important to identify, is there a difference between these two kinds of war which is being fought in terms of the party which are involved, technology which is involved and various aspects. So today we'll try to understand and answer one question which is very important. What is the difference, if at all there is a difference, in these two contemporary wars which is being fought? Having said that, let's dive into the various aspects what we'll be comparing between these two wars which are being fought. The aspects are: one, what is the type of war which is being fought? We'll analyze the character of the war, also the status of dominant player, how it started and what is the status now, battlefield, the state of the various parties which are involved in the wars, and finally let's analyze the end state, what is both the parties are wanting at the end of this war. Having discussed the various aspects, the first aspect is the type of war itself. As far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, we can see that Russian forces are fighting a conventional force, that is a conventional Ukrainian force at its border. The enemies in the conventional forces are well known to each other. There are boundaries, there are battle zones, there are battle lines which are drawn between two armies, and they fight wars in the conventional zone. They wear uniform, they have a well defined structure, they have the equipment which is different from a civilian equipment, and when you are targeting such equipment, infrastructure, organizational headquarters, it is well defined and well recognized by the both the parties of which are doing the war. In such wars, the civilians are not targeted, the militaries do not hide behind the civilians and do not use extensively the civilian structure which exists. So this is as far as the Russian-Ukraine war is concerned. Whereas on the other extreme, we see the Israel-Palestinian war which is going on. It is a conventional Israeli force which is fighting an unconventional enemy, the terrorist organizations. These terrorist organizations, or the people, they fire rockets and they merge into civilian. On the other hand, they use civil infrastructure like hospitals, schools, etc. for military use. They also use civilian compounds for build up of tunnels, extensive tunnel networks. If somebody has to target these tunnels as a military infrastructure, then they have to destroy the civilian structure per se, target these tunnels. Some of the aspects have come into light where the civilians have been used as the human shields to protect the militant organization or the leadership or the infrastructure. In such wars, in such scenario, it is very difficult to identify the enemy from a remote area or from the aircraft, and it is extremely challenging for the Israeli forces to pinpoint and identify and kill them. But the chances of misidentity of a militant for a civilian or civilian for a militant is extremely high, and hence very high care has to be taken that the civilians are not killed during operations which is going on. But because it is a war zone, a war is being fought, collateral damages are bound to happen. So as far as these two wars are concerned, there is a clear distinction between two conventional forces fighting a war, and on the other hand, one conventional war, the Israeli force fighting an unconventional war, and hence the differences between the two is well understood now. Now going on to the second aspect, the battlefield per se, how the battlefields are different in both the cases. As far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, we see Ukraine is a very open ground. It is interspersed with low population area, built up areas, and there is a lot of space which is available for the Russian forces to maneuver around and target the enemy infrastructure, troops, headquarters, etc. Whereas on the other hand, Israeli-Palestinian war, there is no battle zone per se existing. It is only built up area. Majority of the places, densely populated built up area is the battle zone. So Israeli force has to create battle space to maneuver, to isolate. In that attempt to create space for themselves, they had to destroy a lot of civil infrastructure and maneuver around the built up area. The high density of the population of Gaza Strip, various cities, is again what is not seen in the Russian theater. So a very well distinct battlefield which exists. On one side it is open ground, a lot of spaces to maneuver, and on the other hand it is a totally built up area with high density of population and very restrictive space as far as battlefield is concerned. So that is the major difference between these two battlefields which is existing as of now. The third aspect what has to be understood is the state of two parties which are involved in the war. As far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, the Russian enemy was initially weak, but they have been made stronger over a period of time by the NATO member states and the United States of America. Initially, there was a lot of asymmetry which existed between Russia and the Ukraine forces, but this asymmetry has been bridged over a period of time. Still, there is a lot of asymmetry which is existing, and hence Russia is able to nail Ukraine away from its border. Though they have been successful launching an offensive in Russia, but it has been largely curtailed and it is in the process of eviction. As far as the Russia-Hamas war is concerned, and now Hezbollah war on the northern front of the Israeli enemy is extremely weak militarily and technologically, and also in numbers there is no comparison. So the asymmetry which is existing between a conventional Israeli force and the unconventional terrorist organization is huge. It is a huge disparity in any terms whatever we take. So disparity between these two wars, when we say a dominant player Russia and Israel, the asymmetry is existing, and it is true for all the wars whatever we see in any period of time, that war will always take place between two players, where one player will be a dominant player and second player will be an extremely low player. It will be very rare examples where two forces in parity will have such a long war. It's a matter of in-depth study as to why such things exist. Next important thing is to identify the character of war and what is the difference between the character of war in these two theaters which is there. In Russia-Ukraine, conventional violent war is being fought by two conventional enemies. For every inch of ground there is a struggle. Russia initially was thought that they will be able to defeat Ukraine in a matter of time, but it's almost 2 years and beyond. The war is still continuing and it has come to a halt and a well-defined battle zone. After an initial surprise and shock and awe effect which was lost, the war became a grinding machine. Initially, Russians had technological air superiority, but the gap has been bridged over a period of time. In case of Russia and the Ukraine war, what we see by the various factors what we have analyzed, the terrain, the built-up area, oblique, the open ground, and the kind of enemy which is there, two conventional force fighting each other, we see around 80% of the war is being fought as a contact war, and 20% aspect of the war is a non-contact war. Vis-a-vis, when we see Israel on the other hand, the technological superiority of Israel forces makes it a one-sided war. Hamas, Hezbollah have limited military might and targeting capabilities as far as their capability is concerned. Israel enjoys complete superiority in air, space, intelligence, and the support what they are getting from United States and its allies. So in case of Israel-Hamas, what we see is 80% is a non-contact. Standoff weapons are being used, precision weapon has been used, satellite space is being used, cyber is being used, walkie-talkie attacks have been used, which is remote and operated from people sitting right in Israel. So the non-contact part of the battle is around 80%, and the contact part is only to surround a particular area, destroy it, do the combing operations, and liberate that area and sanitize that area or secure that area from the territory is around 20% during this campaign. So a very well difference in the character of war at two theaters, 80% contact and 20% non-contact in Russia war, whereas in Israel war it is almost 80% non-contact and 20% of contact warfare. So that kind of difference exists in both the theaters. When it comes to allies, let's analyze the allies support of Russia. Russia had no allies whatsoever when they started their campaign. Over a period of time, what we have seen is that countries like China, India, Iran, and North Korea are supporting Russia directly. There may not be any support, but indirectly there is a lot of support. They are not as strong an ally. There's no ally formation which has happened in case of Russia with all these countries what I have named earlier. They are not as strong an ally as United States is to the Ukraine, but are extending valuable support when the Russia requires the support of these countries. Ukraine on the other hand has a very solid support of United States, UK, EU, oblique the NATO members and their own friendly nations in the world. So Russia more or less started in isolation, got support over a period of time. Now let's analyze Russia, Hamas. Israel from the word go had a full support of United States, UK and other NATO member states. Hamas, Hezbollah were the proxies of Iran, hence had the support of Iran since the beginning. Again, Iran is a very weak nation. It has been under sanctions for a lot of time. It is quite far away from Gaza Strip and Lebanon, hence the support in terms of material, in terms of economy is also restricted. Biggest reason being Iran itself being a very weak nation, and maybe some tacit support support from Russia and China through Iran is also does exist, or I can say may exist, as far as Hamas and Hezbollah is concerned, because of the overall geopolitical dynamics which is taking place in the world. We have also heard that Chinese was involved in making the tunnels and all those things. That was it had to happen before the war, but even during the war, such supports are not ruled out. As far as the Islamic world support is concerned to Hamas and Hezbollah, to a large extent we can see that the final support would come through the direct contributions or indirect contribution to these terrorist organizations. So as far as the ally analysis is concerned, Russia started alone, built up on support over a period of time. Ukraine from the word go had a strong support, whereas the Israel from the word go had a very strong support from all the nations. Hezbollah and Lebanon had very limited support. So this is how the ally game has been played during both the wars. Now let's analyze the state of the dominant player, how the dominant player played a very important role. Now let's analyze the state of the dominant player here. Russia-Ukraine war, the Russia is no doubt the dominant player, is supposed to win, should have won the war long back. But being a dominant player, it is still defined as an aggressor. Most of us will agree that its definition of an aggressor comes from the Western narrative, but the war of narrations nowadays, the information warfare. So you will invariably find that majority of the countries would define Russian invasion into Ukraine. On the other hand, you would notice the Israel, as the event unfolded, has become a victim and hence is getting the legitimacy to destroy all the Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists. So this is a very important aspect which needs to be understood well by all the nations, that you want to be called an aggressor or you want to be defined as a victim once you go into war. It's a very important aspect which needs to be ingrained in building the tempo to the war. The conditions to fight a war should not in any term define you as an aggressor. How it has to be done, it's a detailed analysis in itself. The end states. So these end states has been discussed in a lot of forums, and the President Putin also describing. And this is my analysis in crux. There's a lot of things which are there which is jotted down and is black and white available. Russia would like to see the end state in a manner in which Ukraine is not inclined to join NATO. It has to remain NATO neutral. It has to have that buffer zone, act as a buffer zone, strong enough not to evoke fear in the mind of Russia. Secondly, now after fighting and gaining so much of territory, Russia would like to retain the majority of the territory captured during the war. So what I think is the end game of Russia is to make Ukraine NATO neutral and retain the maximum territory under its control. Whereas the Israel end state, if we analyze, what I feel is Russia would like to destroy the entire terrorist infrastructure and leadership in its immediate neighborhood, and may attempt to weaken Iran to a point where it's no longer a threat to Israel. So here where the lines would be drawn, and it is also linked to the election which is going in the United States. As the election gets over and the new government is placed in United States, maybe we have this as the end role where the Israel would like to settle down if all its people who have been captured by this terrorist organization are released. It will not be a matter of surprise for anyone that most or few of the hostages which have been captured are not even returned, because they would have got killed by the bombings of Israel itself or by the terrorists themselves. Israel have to come out of this war with this end state. So this was a small analysis, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this analysis, comparison short and sweet, please do subscribe and give your likings to the channel. Thank you so much.